Marcus wiped the grease from his hands onto his jeans and stared at himself in the rearview mirror of his beat-up Ford F-150. His reflection looked back at him, a 34-year-old man with tired eyes, a crooked tie, and a tiny smear of motor oil on his left cheek that he hadn't noticed yet. He licked his thumb and rubbed at it, wondering if tonight was a mistake, wondering if he was ready. It had been 3 years since his wife walked out, leaving him alone with a 7-year-old daughter named Lily, who still slept with the nightlight on and asked God every night to bring her mama home. Marcus had stopped asking God for things a long time ago, but his coworker Janet had begged him for weeks to just try, just one date, one evening, one small step back into the world of the living. So here he was, driving toward a restaurant called the Blue Lantern, wearing his best shirt, heart hammering like he was 19 again. And then he saw her. If you believe in kindness and second chances, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to the Kindness channel right now. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We've got people tuning in from all over the world, and we love knowing you're out there. She was pulled over on the shoulder of Route 9, hazard lights blinking orange against the darkening sky, standing beside a silver Honda Civic with her arms crossed and her jaw tight. She was maybe 30, with natural hair pulled back under a baseball cap, wearing civilian clothes, dark jeans, a green jacket, and she looked like someone who handled hard things alone. But the tire on the rear left was completely flat, and the spare she dragged out was sitting on the ground while she stared at the lug nuts like they personally offended her. Marcus slowed down. He told himself not to stop. He was already 12 minutes late. He had a reservation. He had a chance at something good for the first time in 3 years. He drove past her. He made it about 40 yards before Lily's voice popped into his head. Not her real voice, but the voice she used when she asked him questions that cut right through him. "Daddy, if somebody needed help and you could help them, would you?" He pulled over. He jogged back with his toolbox from the truck bed, the one he always kept back there out of habit, something his own father had drilled into him growing up in rural Kentucky. "You keep tools, Marcus, because this world will always need fixing." The woman turned when she heard him coming and immediately stiffened. Her hand moved, just slightly, instinctively, toward her hip. An old habit. He noticed it but didn't mention it. He raised both hands, toolbox dangling from his right. "I'm not trying to bother you, ma'am. Flat tires are no fun alone. I can have that changed in about 8 minutes if you'll let me." She studied him for a long moment. Brown eyes that missed nothing, sharp, quiet intelligence behind them. She wasn't scared, he realized. She was assessing. Finally, she said, 8 minutes, huh? "Probably 7, he said and smiled before he could stop himself. Her name was Diane. She didn't offer her last name, and he didn't ask. She stood with her arms still crossed while he worked, but not in a hostile way anymore, more like someone who wasn't used to being still while someone else handled things. She asked him questions in a measured, even tone. Where was he headed all dressed up like that? He told her. A blind date. She almost smiled. Why'd he stop? He thought about lying, about saying something cool and simple. Instead, he told her about Lily, about the question his daughter asked him without ever really asking it. Diane was quiet for a moment, then she said, "That's a good kid you're raising." "She's raising me," Marcus said without looking up from the tire. "Most days, honestly, she's raising me." He had the spare on in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. He stood up, rolled his shoulders back, and started gathering his tools. Diane reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her wallet. He shook his head before she could even open it. "Please don't," he said. "I didn't stop for money." She put the wallet back. She looked at him like she was filing something away, the way people do when they encounter something that surprises them in a way they didn't expect to be surprised. "You're going to be late for your date," she said. "Yeah," he agreed, glancing at his phone. 22 minutes late now. "She might not be there anymore." Diane nodded slowly. "Well, thank you, Marcus, I mean that." He nodded, picked up his toolbox, and walked back to his truck. He sat in the driver's seat for a second, took a breath, and pulled back onto Route 9. The Blue Lantern was warm and softly lit, smelling like garlic bread and candle wax. Marcus walked in, gave his name to the hostess, and braced himself. "Your table is still occupied," the hostess said, smiling. She waited. Something loosened in his chest. He followed the hostess through the restaurant, past couples and families and a table of old men laughing loud about something wonderful, and then he stopped walking. Seated at the corner table, her baseball cap now off, her natural hair framing her face, a glass of water in front of her, and a calm expression that shifted into something between disbelief and amusement, was Diane. They stared at each other for 3 full seconds. Then she laughed. A real laugh, sudden and bright, the kind that sounds like it doesn't get out very often. He probably looked ridiculous standing there with motor oil under his fingernails and a crooked tie because she pressed her hand over her mouth and laughed harder. He sat down. "You could have said something," he managed. "You could have said something," she replied, composing herself, eyes still bright. "I didn't know," he said. "Janet just told me her name was Diane. Janet told me his name was Marcus and he was good people." She tilted her head. "She wasn't wrong." He learned over dinner that Diane Okafor was a detective with the county sheriff's department. 12 years on the job. She'd done 3 years in patrol, worked her way up, seen things that gave her reasons to stop believing in people, and had chosen, stubbornly, not to. She was raising her younger brother's 2 kids while he was overseas, a 9-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl who also, as it happened, slept with a nightlight on. She'd been on exactly 2 dates in 4 years, and she'd ended both of them early because something had felt performative about them, like everyone was auditioning instead of just being a person. Marcus told her about Lily, about the way Lily still set a place at the table for her mother sometimes, and how he'd stopped correcting her because maybe that ritual was holding something together inside the little girl that he didn't fully understand and wasn't wise enough to disrupt. He told her about his job at the garage, about the way he loved working with his hands, loved the logic of engines, that something was broken and you could find exactly what was wrong, and you could fix it and it would work again. He said he wished people were more like that. Diane said, quietly, that some of them were. She was looking at him when she said it. They closed the restaurant. They sat in the parking lot of the Blue Lantern for another 40 minutes talking through the windows of their respective cars because neither of them quite wanted the night to end. But both of them were sensible adults who weren't going to pretend they weren't also a little scared. He made her laugh twice more. She told him one story about a call she'd gone on early in her career that had changed the way she saw her job, and he listened the way Lily told him people rarely listened, with his whole face, with his full attention, not waiting for his turn to talk. When they finally said goodnight, she said, "I'm sorry about your tire changing skills. I'm going to have to practice being worse at things." He grinned. "Or I could teach Lily to always drive past people who need help." "Don't you dare," she said and pointed at him. He laughed all the way home. He told Lily about it the next morning over cereal, leaving out the parts that were too grown, keeping the parts that mattered. There was a lady, he said. Her car had a flat tire and he stopped to help, and then it turned out she was his date. Lily put her spoon down and stared at him. "Daddy," she said in the voice she used when he'd done something that impressed her, "that's just like a movie. Better than a movie," he said, "because it's real." She thought about that. Then she nodded. The way 7-year-olds nod when they've decided something is acceptable. "Is she nice?" "She's real nice, Bug. Does she like kids?" He smiled into his coffee. "I think she really does." Marcus didn't know what the future held. He was a careful man, a practical man, a man who had been hurt enough to know that hope was not the same as certainty. But he also knew that kindness had set something in motion that night on the shoulder of Route 9. Not romance, not destiny, but something quieter and more reliable than either of those things. The simple fact that he had stopped when he could have kept driving, that he had shown up for a stranger, and that somewhere in the ordinary miracle of a flat tire and a borrowed jack and a 6-minute 40-second window of grace, 2 careful, tired, big-hearted people had found each other in the dark. Sometimes the road that looks like a detour is actually the whole point of the journey. Sometimes the person you're meant to meet is already standing on the shoulder, waiting, not for rescue, but for someone decent enough to stop. If this story moved you, if you believe the world gets better one small act of kindness at a time, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to the Kindness channel so you never miss a story like this one. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And tell us about a time someone stopped for you, or you stopped for someone else. We read every single one, because your stories matter too. See you in the next one.